Okay, what's going on, guys? As you can tell from the title of this video, this is another vocal tutorial. And there was a lot of these floating around on the internet, but I've had a few people kind of asking me different things about my vocals. And I did have a vocal tutorial, and a lot of people are still asking questions on it, and a lot of people found it helpful. And I figured that my knowledge has been updated a little bit. I can do this a little bit more arranged and try and help people a little bit better. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to be going over diaphragm control and the understanding of the diaphragm. A lot of people don't quite get what the diaphragm's all about. Okay, the diaphragm is very simple, and there's three main things the diaphragm really does. Okay, the first thing is the power. Okay, it gives you power. A lot of people seem to think that the diaphragm is what's changing your scream, and actually diaphragm has very little to do with what you're actually doing up here for your scream. Okay, diaphragm's all down here and it's all focused on breathing. Okay, and it gives you power, and the reason it gives you power is because the diaphragm is the muscle under your rib cage here that's going to push the air out, either more powerful or weaker depending on how much air you actually push out. Okay, so the second thing that it does, and this is actually something that seems to get missed out a lot when people are trying to describe the diaphragm. A lot of time people are just like, yeah, diaphragm, you breathe into it and it gives you all your scream. No, the diaphragm also gives you stability. Okay, now stability and power are kind of mixing the same thing. When you're trying to work with power, you're also trying to manipulate stability and the other way around. Okay, and I actually use power and stability different ways depending on what kind of scream I'm going for, and I'll just explain that when I get to those parts of the tutorial. The third thing, as a lot of people would probably have guessed, is the breathing. Okay, it gives you your breathing, and I'm just going to very briefly go over how you breathe with your diaphragm. It's actually very easy. All you have to do when you're going to breathe, right, you want to have your back straight for a start, and all you want to do is make sure your shoulders aren't going to lift and your chest doesn't go out. If you think about breathing in and all you do is think, right, keep my shoulders down and my chest flat, put your hand on your chest and you breathe without allowing this to move, you'll automatically breathe into your stomach, which is where you need to breathe if you want the correct control of your diaphragm. So all it is that's it. That's breathing in and out with the diaphragm. Okay, that's as simple as that gets. Okay, people shouldn't really have any problems with that. I'm going to show you very quickly how you control the power in your diaphragm. Okay, you can do this without doing any vocals. A lot of people think that to understand the power that the diaphragm gives, you have to do the vocals, but that's actually very false. You don't have to do that at all. All you have to do is practice breathing out harder or softer depending on how much power you want to apply, and that's how you learn how to control how much power goes into your scream. So all you do is you breathe in and you try and push that air out as fast as you can. Okay? And you'll notice that your stomach will kind of clench up and it will kind of suck in a little bit, and that will push the air out really fast. And all that is that's just your diaphragm just pushing the air out of your lungs as fast as it can, because that's what you're making it do. You're tensing up the diaphragm and say using your abdominal muscles and everything and just pushing it out. That is the control of power. And now you can do that. You can do like that in bursts. You can do it so that the breath doesn't run out straight away. You can have it so it's like and that's diaphragm control. That is virtually it. You practice doing that, you'll actually increase your stamina and vocals just by doing that little exercise. And stability really comes into what we just talked about, controlling the power. Controlling the power stabilizes the scream, okay, and that's where stability comes into. So when I say that they're can join together, that's kind of what I mean. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is the low scream. Now, I have two different kind of low screams that I'm going to talk about. One of them is my kind of original technique I went over in the first video, but I'm going to assume you haven't seen that video, so I'm going to tell you again how that works. First thing you want to try and accomplish is this angry sigh, and it's quite simple. It's just a with a little bit of emotion, a little bit of grit, and using your false chords, okay? I'm not going to go into it in too much depth. You can go back and watch my last video if you really want to figure that out. But you want to think of it as like you're trying to fog up a window, but you're really pissed off with this window for some reason, so you're like, okay? And that's pretty much all that is. Then you take that, you add that diaphragm power that we spoke about just a little bit ago, and all that is pushing the air out faster while doing that sigh. So you're trying to push that air out while doing that sigh. It gives you more power, and you go from the to an okay? Now you take that and you make an O shape with your mouth, like a O, okay? And you take that and you make an O shape, O. Virtually you're low, okay? And you just practice it, warm up, not like me where I have just sat down and decided I'd start doing this. So it will sound kind of rusty at the moment, but as long as you're getting what I'm trying to say, that's kind of the main thing, okay? So that is the first kind of low I ever learned to do. Now, actually as of recent, in the last month, I have changed my technique in lows. It's still that same thing, that sigh with the O shape, but all I do is I bring my tongue up to the roof of my mouth, and it changes the tone quite a lot. It also changes the pitch. It will make it deeper. So I'm going to just demonstrate it right here quickly. I'm going to just show you how it changes from the normal O to the other low with the tongue up. Okay, so you hear how it changes, and you can go from the tongue to the normal. Alright, and just so that you can really hear the difference in them, I'm going to give you a little sample vocal recording of the one without the tongue. And now one with the tongue. Okay, now you could tell from those two recordings there that they do sound much different. The one without the tongue, it almost sounds a little bit weaker. It's not as low pitched. It's got a slightly less dense or less aggressive tone. As the one with the tongues, it's the pitch is obviously much lower. The whole tone's changed. It almost sounds like a different vocalist. But I will stress that both recordings came from me. The second recording with the tongue up is also, like I said, it's more aggressive, and that's why I prefer using those ones now. Vocalists like Phil Bozeman, he puts his tongue up to the roof of his mouth, or just to like the back of his teeth when he does his lows and everything like that. It gives them a little bit more of a growl, a little bit more of aggression to them. And that's pretty much all there is for that. Because the next thing I'm going to talk about is mid-screams. Now, mid-screams are quite easy to accomplish, but I'm just going to say really quickly that you want to be making sure that your diaphragm control is good. You want to have that perfect mix of power and stability when it comes to your mids. And if you have too much power and not enough stability, your mid's going to be really shaky, it's going to be weak, it's not going to sound very good. And if you have not enough power, it's going to come out really airy, it's going to sound really crap, and there's not going to be much of a scream in it. Again, I haven't warmed up, but I'm just going to show you here how easy it is. If you can get that low, you can get the mid, and it's pretty much straight away between the low and the mid. All you're doing is changing the O to an ah, and you've pretty much got the mid. Ah! You've got a mid, okay? And you can practice going oh, ah, low to a mid, okay? So that's it, that's a mid, and then you just have to practice it with music. Okay, so the next thing we're going to be talking about, and this is the last but certainly not the least thing here I'm talking about as far as vocals go, it's highs. Okay, now highs are the thing everyone wants to do, or at least most people want to know how to do highs. Either people say they can't get high enough, or they're not very powerful. If those are the things you're having, those are the problems you're getting, that you can't get high enough or they're not powerful enough, I'm going to say one thing: practice, practice, practice. Okay, I said the same thing 3 times just to stress how important practice is to this. There is no easy way out of this. You need to practice. You need to just go through it. Get your technique down and just practice it. Okay. So I'm going to be showing you here again 2 different samples of different highs. The first kind is going to be a sample from a Carnifex cover I did, and the other one's going to be from some of the vocal pre-production I'm doing with the band I'm in at the moment, Brain Collapse. And you're going to hear a lot of differences between these 2 highs. And the first thing with the Carnifex highs, they're not going to be as high pitched and they're not as clean. And you'll see what I mean as clean. The Carnifex ones are much raspier, and the Brain Collapse ones are much higher pitched, much cleaner. And again, the difference between these 2 not only is months of practice. There's a good month or 2 months between the 2 recordings of vocals. But the next thing is actually just the shape of my mouth. For the Carnifex highs, I make a kind of ah. And for the Brain Collapse ones, I make a smiling kind of ah. Okay? So my mouth doesn't actually open that wide when I do the Brain Collapse ones. And you'll notice when I show you the samples that on the Brain Collapse one, I actually pronounce words slightly different from how I do with the Carnifex ones. I know I'm not saying the same words, but you might get what I mean. Words are pronounced slightly differently, almost with a kind of accent. So yeah, here's the highs from the Carnifex cover.
I'll find my own attached to get away from you. I'll find my own attached, never hear me and you. I'll stay up for this to be tried, just deal with you.
Okay, and here are the highs from the Brain Collapse. Alright, so you can probably see there's a big difference between those 2. The Brain Collapse ones, like I said, are higher pitched, they're cleaner. I wouldn't say they're any better. That's really just someone's personal opinion. To me, I like both. I'm a huge fan of Carnifex. I like the work that's been put into the Brain Collapse stuff, but I can't be biased and say I prefer my own. Scott Lewis is obviously a much better vocalist than I am. And when I'm showing you the 2, it's just to show you how you can get completely different sounding highs from one false chord technique, okay? You don't need to go and learn a whole new technique to learn how to make a different sound. And the kind of last thing I'm going to put into this video is I'm going to say that if you notice, a lot of this stuff has come from experimenting, okay? I've just kind of been sitting, playing around with what I've got vocal-wise, and you should probably do the same, okay? If you're thinking, you know, I want to have something unusual, I want to do something no one's done before, you really just have to experiment. You know, certain things like tongue position, how your mouth's shaped, how much power you put in. And that's the other thing actually I kind of missed about the Carnifex highs. They have more stability and not as much power. Whereas the Brain Collapse ones are actually a little bit more power and not as much stability. Okay, that also helps clean up the highs and the Brain Collapse stuff. But the Carnifex ones are more controlled. Okay, so yep, experiment, practice. Go like Brain Collapse on Facebook. There will be a link in the description below this video. If you have any questions, comment below. If you're too embarrassed to ask me something, or you might feel silly or whatever, don't for a start, you shouldn't. But if you do, you can private message me on my YouTube here. And that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope it could help. And any questions, ask. See you guys later.